Snow fell softly over the wide Texas plains, turning the massive ranch into a quiet painting of white and silver. Christmas Eve had always been loud here. Music, guests, laughter, but tonight the house stood dark, silent, and distant. The only sounds came from the stable, the gentle stomp of horses, the scrape of a shovel, and the steady breathing of a young woman who worked through the cold with cracked hands and tired eyes. Her name was Clara. At 23, life had already taught her more hardship than most people faced in a lifetime. She pulled her worn jacket tighter, brushing hay from her sleeves as she cleaned the last stall. While families across the country gathered around fireplaces and trees, Clara scrubbed floors and hauled buckets, her breath fogging the air. She had no family waiting for her, no gifts, no warm dinner, only work. She told herself it was just another night, even though something about Christmas Eve always made loneliness feel heavier. The ranch belonged to Daniel Whitmore, a man whose name carried weight in the county. He was known as a rich rancher, a man who owned thousands of acres, prize-winning horses, and a fortune built over decades. People spoke of his success with admiration and envy, but few knew the quiet man behind the wealth. Daniel was in his late 50s, tall, broad-shouldered, with silver in his beard and sadness in his eyes that never quite faded. Years ago, he had lost his wife and young daughter in a car accident on Christmas Eve. Since then, the holiday had become something he avoided. No decorations, no guests, no celebrations. He kept himself busy, burying grief under responsibility and routine. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. The memories came every year, sharper than the cold wind outside. He sat by the window of his study, staring out at the snow-covered fields, when he noticed a dim light near the stables. Confused, he checked his watch. It was late, far later than any worker should still be out there. Most of the staff had gone home early for the holiday. Something stirred in him, a mix of concern and curiosity. Pulling on his coat, he stepped outside, the crunch of snow under his boots echoing in the silence. Clara didn't notice him at first. She was focused on finishing her work before her fingers went numb. She had taken extra shifts to earn a little more money, hoping to save enough to move out of the small, leaking trailer she rented on the edge of town. Her childhood had been shaped by foster homes and disappointment, and independence was the only thing she trusted. When she finally straightened up, rubbing her sore back, she froze. Daniel stood a few feet away, his presence sudden and intimidating. Ranch owners didn't usually come to the stables at night, especially not on Christmas Eve. I'm sorry, sir, she stammered. I was just finishing up. I didn't mean to stay so late. Daniel raised a hand. Gently. You're not in trouble, he said, his voice calm. I just wanted to know why you're here. Everyone else went home hours ago. Clara hesitated. She wasn't used to being asked questions that weren't orders. I needed the hours, she finally said. And the horses don't care what day it is. For a moment, Daniel simply watched her. He noticed the red, raw skin on her hands, the thinness of her jacket, the exhaustion she tried to hide behind politeness. Something about her reminded him of his daughter. The same quiet strength, the same way of carrying pain without complaint. Have you eaten? He asked suddenly. Clara blinked, surprised. I know, sir. I'll eat later. Daniel nodded slowly. Come inside, he said. That wasn't a question. She followed him hesitantly to the main house, her boots leaving wet prints on the polished floor. The warmth hit her first, then the smell of food. Daniel led her to the kitchen, where a simple but hearty meal sat untouched. Sit, he said. Please. Clara ate carefully at first, embarrassed by her hunger, but soon she couldn't stop. Tears stung her eyes, not just from the food, but from the kindness. It had been a long time since anyone had cared whether she'd eaten. Daniel watched quietly, feeling a strange ache in his chest. He hadn't shared a meal with anyone on Christmas Eve in years. After dinner, they sat in silence for a moment. Then Daniel spoke, his voice low. Why don't you have anywhere to go tonight? Clara swallowed. I don't really have anyone, she said simply. It's okay. I'm used to it. But Daniel shook his head. No one should get used to being alone. The words hung heavy in the air. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the dark fields. I lost my family on Christmas Eve, he said quietly. Since then, I've avoided this day. I thought staying busy would make the pain go away. It didn't. Clara listened, her heart aching for this man she'd only known as her employer. She realized then that wealth didn't protect anyone from loss. "I'm sorry," she said softly. Daniel turned back to her, studying her face. "You know," he said, "I've watched you work here for months. You never complain. You take extra shifts. You care for the animals like they matter. And tonight, I saw you cleaning stables on Christmas Eve while everyone else was with their families." She shrugged. Someone had to do it. Daniel took a deep breath, as if making a decision he'd been avoiding for years. Then he said the words that would change both of their lives. "You deserve a better life." Clara laughed nervously, thinking he was being kind. "This is my life, sir." "No," he said firmly. "It doesn't have to be." Over the next few days, Daniel learned more about Clara's story, her time in foster care, her struggle to finish high school while working, her dream of studying veterinary medicine someday, a dream she'd buried because it felt impossible. The more he listened, the more he realized how much potential she had, and how unfair it was that the world had never given her a real chance. One morning, he called her into his office. Clara stood awkwardly, expecting instructions. Instead, Daniel slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a scholarship application, already filled out, along with a check that made her breath catch. "I'm paying for your education," he said. "Veterinary school, housing, everything." Clara's hands trembled. "I can't accept this," she whispered. "I haven't done anything to deserve it." Daniel smiled gently. "You cleaned my stable on Christmas Eve without being asked. You showed up when life gave you every reason not to. That's more than enough." Tears streamed down her face as she tried to speak. No one had ever invested in her future before. "Why?" she finally managed. Daniel leaned back in his chair. "Because helping you feels like honoring the family I lost. And because I don't want to spend the rest of my life surrounded by things instead of people." Years passed. Clara graduated at the top of her class, becoming a skilled veterinarian with a heart as big as the planes she'd grown up working on. She returned to the ranch, not as a stable hand, but as a partner, helping Daniel care for the animals he loved. The ranch transformed, not just in success, but in spirit. Christmas lights appeared for the first time in decades. Laughter returned. The house felt alive again. On another Christmas Eve, Clara stood beside Daniel, watching snow fall over the fields. "If you hadn't come to the stable that night," she said, "I don't know where I'd be." Daniel smiled, eyes shining. "If you hadn't been there," he replied, "I'd still be hiding from life." Sometimes, a single act of kindness changes everything. Sometimes, the person cleaning a stable on Christmas Eve is the one who reminds you what really matters. And sometimes, all it takes is someone looking at you and saying, "You deserve a better life." If this story moved you, remember, there are countless Claras in the world waiting for someone to believe in them. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories that restore faith in humanity, because kindness doesn't just change lives on screen, it changes the real world too.